morning and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines and the stories that make the Elm City tick. Today we're doing headlines, local music. I'm going to run down some of the bigger stories that have been in the New Haven Independent lately and intersperse it with music by New Haven musicians and one video visit with a Michelin star chef. So that's all happening today. Hope everyone's doing well on this rainy, spring-like weather temperature day. Going to go back to winter tonight. We've also got Harry Strohs, the WNHA station manager, in there. So, today, sometimes in New Haven, the news is showing us a lot that's going wrong. And we feel like New Haven's not doing great, but other things happen that just quietly remind us that New Haven's been on this tear. I mean, we're getting swanky, folks. We're still a city with high poverty. We still have serious challenges, but not only is crime way down, but a lot of money's coming in. And not just money to buy up rundown houses that are supported, subsidized by Section 8 rents from the federal government, but upscale apartments and upscale hotels. There's now a race going on for who can get up the first batch of what are called boutique hotels, expensive places to stay that are smaller with a local theme, don't feel like a chain. And yesterday I happened to walk into one that is quietly open. It's officially coming open next week, but it's called the Blake. It's at High and George Streets. It used to be a car rental lot. It's got 108 rooms, 6 stories, and boy, is it swanky. It's one of those times as a reporter I feel like I get to do some stuff that I wouldn't be doing in real life if I paid the bill. And Randy Salvatore is the developer of this project. He got it up first, and he's done these boutique hotels, which is a national trend in other cities in Connecticut, like Norwalk, Stamford, Danbury, Hartford. And this is his latest one. Yeah. And this is, pretty soon the Duncan is going to be one. It's being reborn as the Graduate around the corner. And actually last night, Wednesday night, the City Plan Commission gave final approval to build another hotel around a few more rooms, but not a lot more. But that's going to be a Hilton Garden Inn right at the shack corner of Elm and Orange, the old Webster Bank building. So it's happening, folks. And I was wondering, it's like with all these apartments we're building, they're expensive. So at the Blake, it's $250 to well more than that a night to stay in a room. And I've been wondering, where these people are coming from. They're staying in these market rate apartments we're building. And I guess the money's coming in because there was a sense there aren't enough hotel rooms in New Haven. The city, they were finding out when there were conferences here, people were staying out at these new, smaller hotels popping up in places like Milford, Wallingford, because the people couldn't stay in New Haven. Even though we have good hotels, they're booked. There's also a question about convention space needed too, but so they'd have to take a train up from Milford or rent a car and come from Wallingford, and that's a pain. That shouldn't be happening. So that's why people building us, the smart money believes there's a market. This Blake place is swanky, I got to tell you. Even the workout room, they have all these fancy high-tech machines that have virtual trainers that tell you how to work out. I think the swankiest part is the restaurant on the first floor. So they lured New Haven's first ever Michelin star chef, a guy named Matt Lambert, to cook in this restaurant. They're calling the restaurant Hamilton Park. And I learned something yesterday. I learned a bunch of things. One is that there used to be a place called Hamilton Park in New Haven. It was at the corner of Whaley Avenue and West Park Avenue before there was an Edgewood Park. And before there was a Yale Bowl for games. This was in the 1800s, and that's where they played football and where people hung out. So they said they wanted this to be a hangout place. And the other thing I learned was all sorts of stuff you could make. See, I'm a vegan, and I keep kosher, so I don't eat pig, I don't eat seafood, and that's a big thing that this restaurant's going to have. But this 5-star chef showed me how he makes some of the stuff out of pig products that he gets a source locally. It's going to be a New England-themed bistro. There's something called charcuterie. By the way, Harry Joseph, have you heard of charcuterie?
No, I have not.
No, I haven't either. I forget what it is again, but it's something that you get at fancy restaurants. How about mortadella? You heard of something called mortadella?
No, I like good old American food, hamburgers.
Well, they're going to have hamburgers, but they're going to have fancy hamburgers. And when this place opens next week, they're going to say that you got to know, even though it's not on the menu, to ask for the fancy hamburger of the week.
By the way, that was a joke,
What?
because Trump said he likes good American food and he served them hamburgers and Kentucky Fried Chicken.
But so this guy Matt Lambert. So did you know what? I didn't know this whole thing. I called him a 5-star Michelin chef, and everyone said there's no such thing as a 5-star Michelin chef. What it was is that the New York Daily News had called him a 5-star chef at this restaurant he owns in New York. So the developer in New York said, "Come up, do it here." And then there's something called a Michelin rating, which is supposed to be the best chefs in the world. And they give you a star for that. Apparently, that's like the elite of the elite. It's like being an Olympic athlete. And this apparently is our first ever Michelin star chef in New Haven. I was watching him train the staff yesterday. They were calling him chef, like they do in the movies, or those TV shows. And he was down to earth guy, great guy from New Zealand. So he taught me a few things about food I think people are going to want to eat, even though I can never eat it, being a vegan and being kosher. But Harry, you want to watch this with me and see what we learn and put it on the screen for folks? And this is Matt Lambert, our first ever.
So we're with Matt Lambert, Michelin star chef at the Hamilton Park, just left of Brown
Hotel in town, the Blake. And you were about to explain to me what you had just cooked up as you're preparing. What do you got there, Matt?
Yep, dish, from the British Isles, British Isles cookery, that's pretty popular for breakfast with a fried egg. So we've done that. We've poached it in a beef intestine, so it's all natural.
You posted a beef intestine.
Yeah,
okay.
That's it. We have
That's elaborate.
Yeah, well, it's good fun. Like, we want to do simple things, but we want to, make sure we're teaching the next generation of chefs and learning while we're doing it. So it's almost like a little culinary school in here right now, isn't it?
Yeah, you got everyone training.
Yeah. So there's that. We're also making our own mortadella, which we have cooking in here.
And you just explained to me what mortadello is.
Yeah. Mortadella is a emulsified pork sausage with
emulsified
pork
liver
sausage and pork fat. So we work with local farms from Maine to source the pork and then make everything from that.
So you source it from Maine because you said part of the concept here is that you've got a local flavor, New England farms.
Yeah, so that's the whole thing is we want to create something that speaks to New England, and to do that you're going to have to use stuff that's of New England. So everything we're sourcing is New England based for the people of New England. We want to champion the area because we love it, so you can love it more.
All right. What else you got there on the tray?
Cool. I've got a foie gras terrine right here.
Foie gras, okay.
Yep. I have a confit duck leg terrine here.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? A coffee?
Confit duck leg.
Confit duck leg.
Yeah. So we age ducks for 12 days. We take the legs off and we cook them really slowly in duck fat. And then when they're ready, we shred them. And we add herbs, vinegar, a couple of secret ingredients.
Wow.
And then tie it with a pellet here. Okay, that's cool. They're in the test kitchen. So yeah.
So now this is who's going to eat this today because the place isn't open.
We have a bunch of staff training today, so we want to arm them with knowledge so when people come in they know exactly what to expect.
And that is interesting. If you got someone that's going to be serving somebody dinner here, and you said this is the kind of place where not just the people staying at the hotel, but this is going to be a place where people just come to dinner who live in New Haven, private dinners, business dinners. You got a bar, people can hang out. How important is that the server has actually eaten this food before they tell them about it?
It's paramount. Yeah, they need to know as much about all of the dishes as the people that are preparing them.
Got a little blip there in the video. He's talking about why they have to know. Harry, do you think that's just Facebook connectivity? It's moving, but we're not hearing it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it comes back on in a minute. Matt Lambert, the new Michelin star chef.
Part of that is going to be able to, best explain stuff to the guests.
Now you came to us via New Zealand.
Yeah.
You spent 5 years at a Michelin star restaurant 10 in New York.
Yeah.
What's feeling different? You told me about the New England sourcing. What's exciting to you about taking on this new challenge in New Haven after being at the Big Apple?
The most exciting thing for me is doing this is all very fun. I'm from a country that when I left had a population of 3.5 million. So
that's the size of Connecticut.
Yeah.
All right, I guess that's it. But he's not talking about how then there's more people than that in New York. And Harry, I guess I don't know why that's going up now.
You gotta lower the volume.
I turned it off. But
the auxiliary.
Yes. But Anyway, that's you were just hearing from Matt Lambert, and he is the new Michelin star chef in New Haven. I say that as though I always knew what a Michelin star chef was, Harry. But did you know what that was?
No, because when you said Michelin, I was thinking about the
Tires.
Michelin Man, right? The tire.
Yeah. Yeah, but apparently it's a big deal in the world. It's like people pay they pay more for dinner than we pay
But
for
what
rent.
does Michelin mean in association with
It's
a
a
chef?
rating guide for food in fancy restaurants worldwide, I believe. And so if they say the very best, Olympic caliber chefs, they give them a Michelin star. So this is the first person we've had apparently in New Haven, unless I'm wrong. Because we got swanky restaurants as is in New Haven. A lot more money than you or I could ever pay. If I have someone I know has a lot of money take me out to dinner, or there's a story I might eat there. But what do you think about these big fancy hotels in New Haven, these big fancy restaurants? Do you think that's a good thing, whether or not we can eat there because of the tax revenue and the jobs? I mean, there can be 30 people working at this restaurant and another 20 in this small hotel. That's a pretty good thing. That's 50 jobs, right?
Yeah, it's a good thing, but can we sustain these types of businesses? If we can, we should.
Now, restaurants do go in and out a lot of business,
Yeah.
but New Haven has done great for about 15, 20 years now with these upscale restaurants. People come from all over. I know people like fancy food in New York. They come to New Haven to check out some of these restaurants. They charge so much money, and I guess you're paying, for quality and all that kind of stuff.
Well, as long as there's there's upscale restaurants, and there's also restaurants where, the middle class family or the lower middle class family could go and eat also. It's a good mixture.
Yeah,
of restaurants down here.
There is, because there are ones we can go to. Like, I love going to the vegan Caribbean bar on George Street.
The vegan Caribbean.
Yeah, it used to be a mix. They used to have one set. It's called 9 Square Market 2. And it's the only thing on that block that you can walk into. There's a garage, and it's blocked from Gateway. And it used to be a market. They just kept the name. But it's these, I think, Jamaican folks who originally had half of it be where you pick different proteins and vegetables from a vegan bar, and then other was meat. And they switched all the way to vegan, and a lot of meat eaters go there, and they're still in business 2 years later. So, but you pay about $10 to get a lot of food.
I guess I got to try it, because
that's not.
I think Jamaican food, and I'm thinking pork.
They have jerk tofu like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it's my favorite food in New Haven.
Yeah, you got
I
to try
smile every time I walk out of that. But I guess the question is, some people see the upscale coming and stuff, say, what about us? But other people say, we want to have a city that draws all kinds of people because they pay for those jobs. They pay for taxes, and it's not like there's not other stuff, as you're mentioning. There's plenty of places to eat.
Right,
there's
plenty of places. I wouldn't say what about us I would say it if those were the only types of restaurants. But, it's so rich and different, and not just, affordable restaurants. The variety is just incredible.
It is. And then there's some where they have different kind of marketing within the restaurant. Mia's is a place we love to eat. And they can get hundreds of dollars a person. Some of the fancy Yale groups that go there with the very tailored cooking that you can't get anywhere else. And then there's other stuff they price down for students to come later at night, or those who have been there a long time, with just like really good fried tofu and soup or sushi. So there are also others who try to hit the high and the low. But yeah. New Haven's happening. We'll talk about things that aren't happening, that are tough, especially with the schools. But it is undeniable, because, Harry, right now, while we're talking here on local headlines, local music, on Dateline New Haven at WNHH-FM, your home for community radio at 103.5 FM, and live streamed at newhavenimage.org. As we speak, the governor is in New Haven, and he's here for the kind of announcement that we have often, which is that all these smaller tech firms are coming. Like right at Century Tower, which is at Grove and Church, in an office building. There's this kind of cutting-edge R&D firm we wrote about the other day that's been quietly starting here with like dozens of engineers. It's part of a national company. And today, do you know about quantum circuits and quantum computing?
It sounds fascinating.
It's like the fancy food at this cutting-edge restaurant. Quantum computing, I know, is some kind of cutting-edge development in tech. I'm going to learn more about it later today, because Markeisha Bricks is going to come back. She's covering this announcement. But apparently, this is a big deal. A state-of-the-art quantum computing facility in in-house manufacturing is opening in Science Park. And the governor's there to cut it. It's called Quantum Circuits. It's a lab. It's going to have scientists and engineers, I'm reading from here now, working to develop the first practical quantum computers which have the potential to enable computation that is faster and more powerful than today's supercomputers. So that is what I remember from reading. It's a new kind of computer that, just like they keep inventing the chips that go twice as fast, you know, the whole Moore's law. They're developing a new kind of computer, and New Haven's going to be part of that. And we're going to have people working here. Those are good jobs. And they're going to do drug design for biotech. They're going to be industrial chemical processes, financial tech, machine learning. They're going to be developing computing for all that there.
Yeah, the quantum computers. I was reading on it, and it just sounds fascinating, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost giving. I mean, also we have to be careful about. You look at the movies Terminator and how much power we give these, because we're moving more and more into artificial intelligence soon.
AI.
And with these quantum, the quantum mechanics of it is almost like did you see the movie Minority Report?
No.
With Tom Cruise?
Yeah.
It's almost like that, where these computers are flying, basically. They're operating in a realm that we can't even imagine.
Another dimension. And the question is, will the computers and the robots eventually rule us? Or will we just evolve as humans to be so tethered to artificial intelligence? Because even the big data intelligence is steering us through social media and advertising and algorithms that track what we buy and where we physically are at the moment. They're using that to steer us to consumer behavior. And but also like everything from the Fitbit and what people wear to gauge every step they take, to guide what they do during the day through alarms and other reminders.
Well, and it's another thing for Homeland Security to worry about, right?
Yeah.
So if you would think that a phone representative isn't a major security risk, right? But that representative has access to GPS information, and if you hack one of their computers, you could. And I actually saw a demonstration of it where they tracked the assistant of the mayor of New York City, and they were able to know everywhere the mayor was, and you didn't have to have his schedule or anything. If you know what phone to ping, you could follow them all.
So just like with genetic advances, the genie's out of the bottle. The question will be used for good or bad, but it's happening. And on the very micro parochial level, we look at an announcement like today and say, it's happening lots of places, but it's also happening in New Haven. We're not the center of the universe. We're not the only place, or we're not the big tech place like Route 128 in Massachusetts or like Silicon Valley or New York, but it's definitely happening here, whether it's the kind of downtown market rate housing and now hotels and upscale commerce, or this, and a lot of it's tied to being University City. But also in just terms of jobs, we're starting a Holberton school at the district tech campus, which is going to train people for those middle-level coding jobs that are good jobs. Like the announcement today, we're going to have people who are already engineers and scientists, but it can be something broader. I don't know if it'll be the scale as the old Winchester Arms Factory that was precursor of Science Park, but we're going to be part of the supercomputer thing. I just think it's fascinating the way we have this divided reality in New Haven. We spend a lot of time writing about, talking about, watching real struggles for people who are dealt out of success in society, like what's happening with schools in the city and poverty housing. And yet every day there's also ribbon cuttings and financial decisions about growing our tax base, creating jobs, and going upscale. I mean, we're going to sort of a high-low.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, you look at, for instance, Bella, my granddaughter. She's 7 years old, and they're teaching her coding.
That's great. Bella's going to take over the world. And we knew that when Bella was 3.
Well, it's insane. I think to myself, wow.
That's just thing, because you're not, I mean, you, in some ways, even though you're not a wealthy person or a poor person, you have what some people consider the greatest wealth in this society, which is your both natural ability and your expertise in tech. So you have a granddaughter you're very close to from a young age now, is so comfortable with technology, learning to code. And in some ways, you've given her greater ability to succeed as an adult than if you had a trust fund for her.
Well, and it's also a worry. It's also a worry for us, right? That she's so into technology and so able to maneuver her way around the web and all the apps and stuff. So her mother controls
Right. And
how
Harry, you
much.
read recently how the executives at the tech companies like Apple and Facebook do not allow their kids at that age
Right.
to be on technology, to have smartphones, or to use them much because they want them to learn other critical skills. They don't want to just be tethered to a machine. What I know of, you might be an unusual case because I know that your granddaughter is involved in so much that isn't just tech.
Right.
Right. She's involved, in
a lot.
sports, and you take her places, and so she's a more rounded kid. But there is that danger. But it's also, when we talk about those challenges for what's going to create opportunity for kids, a lot of times the wealthier sector wants their kids to not have, let's say, extra time in school, rigid metric-based standards to push them, or just being tethered to devices that if they know how to use, they'll later be able to do better on standardized tests or get certain kinds of jobs out of the bat. But then people who are growing up without as much money or without as many family connections to get people jobs often want that extra training for standardized tests because they see how if their kids could do well on standardized tests, they'll get into better schools, or they want them to get that advantage with the computer in the school. So I think it's a divided reality.
Yeah, it is a divided reality because you look at those people in Silicon Valley that they don't have, they take away the phones from their kids and everything. Yeah, but it's part of their privilege to not
Right.
to not have to
Right.
expect that from their
Because their
children.
kid are going to have that, and they're growing up with
Exactly.
a lot of money, and with the parents who can
Their
buy
kids
them all
aren't going to
sorts
have
of
to
things.
compete in the real world, where you see the youth in the minority youth, they have to be able to do everything.
And you know what? This is going to make a really interesting transition to a totally different topic. And I think we'll take a break first because this is local headlines and local music at WNHH. And Harry, how would you feel about queuing up a video and let people see it of Tabisa, who's one of our great new, as of 2 years ago, local musicians in New Haven? This is one of her latest tracks.
dig it down. Scum bigodim, dig it down. Scum di dabble do 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 dabble. Scum bigodim, dig it down. Scum bigodim, dig it down. Scum di dabble do 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 dabble. Avulelo nyango wako, kau bulelo sango lako, kau bule dingene bayande sukela bon. Yeah. Kau bulelo nyango wako, kau bulelo sango lako, kau bule dingene. Boom 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 boom. Boom 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 boom. Boom 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 boom. Ay. Woo. Boom 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 boom. Boom 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 boom. Boom 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 boom. Whoa. Yeah. Kau boleh lom yang goa.
There you have it. Tabiza grew up in South Africa. A couple of years ago, moved to Westville here in New Haven, and has taken the local scene by storm. That was one of her songs, Vule. And I think it was shot in South Africa. Could be wrong. Did you watch that video just now, Harry?
I did.
I'd heard the music, but I love that video. There's so much joy in that and the singing.
She's so talented.
She is, and so got such an
she's talented. She's like, her energy is, it's just, I don't know how to describe it. It just feels, she makes you feel what she's feeling.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. That's a good way of putting it. I think that's maybe why she's successful. And you can get her recordings easily on all the music sites, including obviously YouTube. And you can look up her website, which has links. She visits here in New Haven, Independence, WNHH-FM. She was on a couple of weeks ago, and it's just wonderful to hear from Tabiza.
You can look her up on SoundCloud. She has her tracks there. So.
But I like watching the videos.
Yeah,
she makes good videos. So before that, you're listening to Local Headlines, Local Music on WNHH-FM. I'm your host, Paul Bass, Dateline New Haven, with Harry Jost, the WNHH station manager, the bravest man, New Haven. So before that song, Harry, we were talking about how in this discussion about tech, today on Thursday, there's yet another announcement of a new tech employer in town, Quantum Circuits, on the threshold of quantum computing, cutting edge. We talked about how opportunity looks different from families already having privilege, trying to keep their kids away from too much tech when they're young, from test score driven training to boast because they're going to do well anyway, given on the kind of intellectual training they get at home, versus other people who want those same opportunities and their kids don't automatically have them, so they want more tech access and they want more training to do well on tests. And that makes me think of an aspect that's not being discussed right now about the controversy with charter schools in New Haven. Now, I'm not talking about charter schools that are the old school kind, like Common Ground, which is sort of an experimental teacher-run, public school-minded themed environmental school, or even one like Booker T. Washington, which is run by a black community organization, Barrett Church, and has many teachers of color. New Haven's the home to one of the most celebrated charter organizations in the country, Achievement First. It started here. It's branched out to other cities. They have a lot of schools here. They're pretty secretive, even though they get public dollars. And there's big controversy at their high school, Amistad High School, which is considered by some measures among the best in the country. It's in New Hallville. And there have been tensions simmering below the surface there among students and staffers as well of color. And there weren't many at first, but they've hired some. And parents about discipline methods. And they have a strict discipline method and a focus on doing well on test scores and a lot of pressure on the kids that privileged parents, I don't mean just wealthy, I mean just middle class who have a lot going on at school and feel they don't want their kids, as we said earlier, growing up in that environment, cringe from. But despite the fact that these tensions have come to the surface, it's still true that so many African American families, not just poor, but working class, middle class, want their kids in New Haven's charter schools like Amistad High. And they get some kids into schools like Yale that they otherwise wouldn't get into. That happens every year. And what happened now is we had a video of their principal, white, who had shoved a black kid and then lied about it in a video, showed it. And then they didn't fire him for months. And then we put it in the site. And then that morning he was gone. And people are saying, what took so long? And they're saying there's more to it. A black staffer who left had a viral video that caused discussion. I was starting to hear from a lot of members of the black community. We got to talk about this. Last night, Wednesday night, they have this kind of board that no one knows about. They don't even call it a board to oversee the school. And no one goes to meetings the way they go to Board of Ed for the regular public schools. But last night, they had like 100 parents and teachers and students coming to blast them, saying these problems run deeper. They call it a racist place. But I think there are two sides to that argument. And they said we need deeper changes. This board, or whatever you call it, hired a lawyer to investigate why it took so long to fire them. As usual, the people who actually run the school aren't talking publicly because they see it as a private enterprise, even though they get public dollars. But I am sympathetic to both the people who run the school and the parents who want to be there. Because as you were saying earlier, Harry, some families don't have the privilege of creating opportunities at home, whether it's finance, whether it's, a lot of people come from tougher homes, although these are motivated parents often who send their kids, obviously, to the Achievement First schools. But I think that while there are important issues being hashed out about discipline at that school, and we'll get soon to the other side of the coin, where there are discipline issues in New Haven's regular public schools from a different perspective, I think it's important to remember that a lot of people want to go to that school. And if we lose sight of that, we might be just giving up on the argument that we could find some good way to educate kids in cities. What have you been thinking when you've been watching?
Well, Bella goes to a charter school.
That's what I was figuring, in Waterbury, right?
In Waterbury, right? So
here's a typical case where you're not poor, but you feel you don't have the same access necessarily for her that some other privileged families might have for their kids, and you wanted her in a charter school. You didn't want her in a convention public school. Why was that?
The Waterbury public schools are horrible.
A lot of people feel that about New Haven schools. I don't want to make a blanket statement like that. There are great teachers, great principals, great kids, great things that go on in there. But I was a public school parent, and I would not recommend the school system.
Right. So we felt the same way, and we were happy when she got in, and it is a totally different experience, and yeah, they're more strict. They give more work, and then when you add Bella's schedule is full. Every day she goes.
And Bella, unless I'm wrong, because you see her every day, I just see her sometimes, she seems to me like a thriving kid. She has a very loving family, not only parents she's living with, but a grandfather minutes away who's so in his life.
Right.
For life. So that's something that maybe some people say, because when I talk about this subject, people saying, how do we get at the bigger issue? They say that it's crucial we talk about education. We don't make excuses. Everybody can learn. We can make schools better. But it's still true. Some people believe that the family situation is always going to have more impact on how a kid does than others. But then other people say that's an excuse.
No, family is a big thing. Family, when I look at my childhood, if I had, my mother was working all the time, so I was cutting school all the time. There was not a second parent there.
How would your life have been different if you had parents with college degrees who didn't have to work all the time and they were both in the home?
It would have been different. I would have had somebody there, some nurturing force. You need it in your life.
And what would it have done differently? Now, you're a very successful person. You had to graduate from the school of hard knocks to get there. I don't mean acting badly or being a criminal. I mean, you had to teach yourself a lot of stuff and have several jobs at once and worry about a lot of things other people don't have to worry about until you got to that place.
Yeah, and it's...
But would it have been different if you went to a charter school?
It would have... Well, it's not just the charter school. You have to have the parenting, right? So you have to have the parenting. You have to have reinforcements. Like my wife and I are reinforcements for my daughter and Bella's father. So they're there. They're there all the time. Look,
yeah, that is cute. So what I'm wondering is,
and let me just say this, because I'm proud of my daughter and the way she's raising Bella and my other granddaughter Daisy, because she took something that she learned growing. Because my wife and I always found it important for one of us to be there. We always worked our schedules, whether we were in college, working. One of us was always there. It was always one of us taking care of our children. Whether that meant me
We had
work
that too. We had that too.
and
But
and
we were lucky. We were able to.
right. Well, and then now my daughter,
But you made it happen.
we forced it to happen, right?
I mean, we agreed we weren't going to live at a certain income level as a result, but I think our kids got more out of that. And
Right.
fine, safe,
And my
yeah.
daughter is basically mimicking that. One
that's
of them
cool.
is always there.
So I'm
So
trying to
it's
figure out how
important.
you come down, or maybe you're just coming down on both sides, because there are a lot of kids who don't have that, and they deserve a good education. A lot of pressures put on parents who, I mean, on teachers who can't make up for things at home, but can make a real difference. I mean, you often hear about people who succeed despite having tough circumstances. Today I was reading Russell Baker's obituary, who's that great columnist in the Times I grew up reading. He grew up very poor. His father died when he was very young, and his mom had to have somebody else
Well,
raise her for a while, and he became a Pulitzer Prize
The,
writer.
the school system has to make it easier for parents to be involved, right? When I was living here in New Haven and my kids were going to Dwight School, they hated seeing me at Dwight School. So when Harry
because you would
showed up,
speak up.
right, because I would stand there at lunchtime and I would worry about the kids who only had 5 minutes, because depending on who was seated first, had more time to eat, and you would have the kids who would have
You were
5
allowed
minutes
in the
to
building as a parent?
Huh?
You were allowed in the building as a parent? Did you volunteer?
eat. No, I was allowed, but they frowned upon it, and security would be there. And then when my kids moved up, now my son went to Korea, but Jennifer went to another school, and I would show up there too. I would be that parent who would show up to check on my child and to check on the teachers. Because if I heard a complaint, I wanted to actually understand both sides. So I wanted to be in the hallway looking in. So they never were happy with that. But I think you have to allow parents to be parents.
I know schedules are hard too for parents. I remember when my kids were in elementary school at Edgewood before they switched to a Jewish school, day school. When they tried to do a play or something, none of the parents could come even at night of most of the kids because they had jobs. And the very middle class parents, which were a minority, would all be the ones who showed up. And then when they went to Jewish day school, 1 to 2 parent per household of every kid was at every play, and even a daytime performance able to take off. And I think it's because we had the middle class parents had more flexibility. They could still put the food on the table and keep their kids safe and have that kind of flexibility.
I understand that, but you have to advocate for yourself. Because Karen and I weren't always in jobs that allowed us to just take off. So we would look at our schedule, and we would arrange it with our bosses on, look, this is important to us. I'll work another hour, I'll work another this, I'll work another shift, whatever you need, but I need to be there for my child.
So what are you thinking now about this outpouring of criticism of the charter schools in New Haven?
Well, I think you never touch somebody else's child, right? Never.
Well, the school's not defending it, and the question is, why did they let that then continue to have the person there, and it turned out he had a previous incident? It's interesting because I thought that principal, I didn't know about that aspect of him. I actually thought he was a very good principal. He's a very reasonable, passionate person. He's committed to the cause. He's very open to other people's opinions, and I thought it was unusually open to being scrutinized. So people are complicated. Obviously, he had to go after that.
Right.
And it's a shame with social media. This did need to be discussed. It needed to be brought to the fore, but it's unfortunate that all people are complicated and someone who's basically a good person becomes collateral damage.
Right.
But what do you think about the larger picture?
I think parents need to teach their kids to be better, good citizens. It's not just enough to see.
But what about the charter school approach? Should it be is it just that some kids can do well in that approach? Let's have that school for them, and there'll be other kids who need a different kind of approach?
Yes.
Because New Haven now has gone to an approach where we want to have restorative justice, which I'm a big fan of, because they found out that kids are disproportionately suspended. So it's not being nicer. It's saying if you do something wrong or you're about to get more trouble, and they identify the kids, they do the hard work identifying the kids, you have to work it out. We're not just going to kick you out. You're staying after school with the teacher, and you're talking about what you did wrong, and you're going to come up with things you're going to do not just to apologize to the people you did wrong to, but to make up for it with some kind of contribution to the community. That takes more work. It's hard. Some teachers say, look, in practice, what it means is they don't really carry it out. Some teachers have written in the Independent, and we just can't discipline the class and nobody learns. But other people say this has really prevented kids from going down a road where we're just giving up on a strong minority of our population and saying you're going to go into that prison pipeline.
No, I think the kids need structure, right? And there'll be some kids who thrive because their parents have created a structure for them to thrive, right? It doesn't matter how your income level. It's what you get at home. Now, if a parent doesn't care how his child acts at home, the child's not going to care how he acts
so
in
that
school.
brings so they're going to do better at that charter school. And again, there's some kids who have perfectly good parents, perfectly great homes, who it's just any one school isn't right for that student. Here's another dilemma I have looking at the charter issue. So the kids that go to that charter school are going to be disproportionately from homes where the parents care and they're on a good track, and their parents understandably want that kid to have the same opportunity that a middle class family, especially suburban family, has to send them to some private school or some better school than what the New Haven public schools traditionally offer. So it's not fair of us to say they shouldn't have that same chance. But when you look at it from a system-wide perspective, other people say, then you're leaving the traditional public schools with all the kids who have the problems and draining them of the kids who can bring more positive energy and learning to the school environment so everyone does better. Then I go back to, I think that's not an easy equation because I still care about the hundreds of families whose kids should have the same opportunity I had.
Everybody has the opportunity.
Yeah, so until you make all schools good, how do you never want to sacrifice your own kid. So you don't say, my kid's not a social experiment. So I'm not going to help make some other school better by sending the kid there, even though the kid's not going to get as good education. Other people say that's a false dichotomy. Like Hannah, the writer of the New York Times, says, I'm sending my kid deliberately, even though I'm privileged, to an inner city school that doesn't have the same advantages because that kid will learn other things as well and still get a good education. In fact, my older daughter did at Cross, learn a lot of good stuff and get opportunities, even though it was outrageous, some of the lack.
I guess.
But it's a tough call. I'm never going to be critical of a New Haven African-American parent working hard and saying, I just want my kid to go to that charter school because I've concluded it's going to be better for that kid.
Look, my mother was a loving mother. She just couldn't do it all by herself. So when I had issues in school, she just couldn't do it all by herself. And it wasn't that the school system was bad. And even though I went to I was in one of the worst neighborhoods at the time.
Bed-Stuy, when it was Bed-Stuy.
Right. So
now if you're a Bed-Stuy, you'd be probably at some really fancy school.
Depends.
And you'd be eating that mortadella, whatever that's called.
So I actually had to go to school, learn how to survive. The peer pressure, everything that was going on at that time, I had to deal with. And none of it was the teacher's fault. None of it was the system's fault. I was living in a broken home. Wasn't my mother's fault either. But that just happened to be my situation. Now I had friends who were in the same situation as I was, who thrived. That was on me who chose not to thrive in that situation, even though I did. I learned mostly everything I know in those schools, in those horrible schools, but it wasn't the teaching that was the problem. I was soaking it all in.
Mm.
So when I was in class, I always had great grades. I always did good in tests. That wasn't my problem. It was actually showing up.
Well, you had a lot of things going in your life.
I had a lot of things.
We don't have to talk about that today on radio.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting, Harry. It's so interesting talking to you about this stuff that I did ditch the theme of today's show, half of it.
Yeah.
Which we usually do the headline for 5 minutes and then a local song. We got Tabiza in, and I'm all psyched about that. I think it's okay. These are important issues. We have headlines, whether it's the fancy new hotel and Michelin star chef who comes in, or the difficult debates about how to educate kids and what opportunities to give parents. So I've appreciated the chance, Harry Jost, WNHA station manager, to really look behind the headlines with you today on Dateline New Haven and WNHH FM. Thanks everyone for joining in. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free. That is a local song. It's from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. Now we know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Fly free with us all day and all night at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.